Okay, so we are doing debtors reconciliation here. So whenever you're doing debtors reconciliation, you are going to open or to throw up a debtors control account, right? So this is your credit and this is your debit, right? Now the next thing that we are going to do is a debtors list. Debtors list, right? So here you put your amount, here you put your details, right? Now a debit will be positive and a credit will be in brackets, right? So this is how we are going to record it. Now let's look at the information given. The required says we must use the information from the control accounts, which is the debtors control and creditors control, as well as the additional information to prepare a correct debtors control account, to prepare correct control accounts, as well as a correct debtors list, right? Now we're going to start from the control account. So we identify items that need to fall under the debtors control account. Then from there we go to the additional information to also identify items that need to be recorded here. And as we go through the information, whatever that falls here, we'll record it here, and whatever that falls here, we'll record here, right? So which means all the mistakes that have been made in the control accounts and all the items that have not been included in the control accounts, we will include them, and all the items that have been all the items that have not been included here, which are supposed to be included, and all the errors that have been made, we are going to correct them here, right? The errors made in the debtors list. Now let's go to the first item will be the balance of the debtors. How much is the balance? Is 42,730, right? 42,730. And then the next item, we will look on the debit side of the debtors control account. So the next item is creditors allowance. So creditors allowance falls under creditors control, so we're not going to include it here. Now the next item is bank. They say bank, total of debtors column, right? So we don't know whether this amount was paid or received, so we need to determine whether this amount was received or paid, because whenever the bank is affected, it means cash was paid or was received. So if you look at the folio column, it says CRJ, which means is the amount that was received, right? Now we're going to go to the credit side. We credit it bank because it is the total of debtors column, right? Which means is the money that was received from debtors, and therefore debtors control is decreasing on the credit side. Very importantly, debtors, whenever the debtors are increasing or whenever you acquire debtors, you record them on the debit side. And whenever the debtors are decreasing or whenever they are being paid or they are returning items, then you record on the credit side, right? Whenever the data is reducing, you record on the credit side. Whenever the data is increasing, you record on the debit side. Now, how much is the bank? It's 98,430, right? So that's your bank column. I mean your debtors column in the CRG. Now the next item is cash sales. So it cash sales do not fall under debtors control. We're not going to include them because they are cash sales. Cash sales have nothing to do with add data because there is no credit. Only credit sales will be included here. Now the next item is bad debts. So we already know that a bad debt decreases a debtor's balance, because when there is a bad debt, it means you are writing off, you are giving up on one of your debtors because they are not likely to pay you, or maybe it's been long overdue, so we are not hoping for any payment. So we're going to have bad debts, right? How much is it? It's 900, right? That's your bad debts. Now we are done with the debit side of the debtors control account. Now let's go to the credit side. So on the credit side, we've got credit sales. So if you remember, I said whenever there is a credit whenever there is a credit sales, it means your debtors will increase. So credit sales, how much is it? It's 121,400, right? Now we are done with the debtors control account. Let's go to the creditors control account to see if there are not any items that need to be recorded in the debtors control. Right. Now on the debit side, remember you need to go through all the information, because when you are doing a reconciliation, it means there are errors and omissions that have occurred. So you need to go through the information to identify those errors and omissions. For example, in the debtors control account, we just identified creditors allowances which do not belong in the debtors control account. So that's one of the errors that have been made, as well as the debit and credit. Right now, on the debit side of the creditors control account, we've got purchases, and that's purchases only. So purchases fall under the creditors control. So we're not going to correct it now, as much as it has been incorrectly debited. So let's look at the credit side. The credit side is balance, right? And the other one is returns. But now we don't know the returns, whether it's a purchases returns or sales returns. Because remember, when you sell, you are expecting your customers who are not satisfied with the goods to return them. And when you buy, you also expect to return some of the items which we are not satisfied with. Now we need to identify this one, whether it's associated with sales or purchases. So if it's associated with sales, it means we are going to record it here. It means a debtor has returned something, and therefore it reduces the balance, so we're going to credit it, right? Remember, on this side, the debtors control account decreases, and on this side the debtors control account increases. So when the debtor is returning some of the items, it means their balance will reduce. The amount that they owed us will reduce. Now here it's just returns, we don't know. So when you look at the folio column, you see DAJ. So DAJ stands for Debtors Allowance Journal, right? Debtors Allowance Journal. Now when there is a debtors allowance, it means it needs to be credited. So we're going to write it on the credit side. Debtors allowance, it's when the debtor is returning items. So how much is it? It's 3,000. It's 3,000. Sorry, 6,300. 6,300. Right. Now the next item is discount column. So it's a discount column CRJ. It means the debtor was either paying or buying for cash, and then they received a discount. So it does not affect our debtors control account, right? Because that discount is not associated with the debtors. Even if it was a settlement discount, it won't affect the debtors control because the debtors control will reduce by the total, and then it's only bank that will be affected, as the amount paid will not be the same as the debtors control column. Now we don't worry about that. We go to the next item. The next item is bank, total of creditors column, and then it's CPJ. So we're not going to bother about this one as well because it affects creditors. Now, additional information. On additional information, they say, in addition to the errors to the bookkeeper made in the control accounts, an investigation revealed the following. Number one, the total of the debtors list on 30th November, according to the debtors ledger, was 59,340. So we're going to write the balance right here. Balance of the debtors list was 59,340, and then we adjusted this balance, right? So let's go through the other information. The second bullet says the total of the creditors list on 30 November 2014 according to the creditors ledger was 74,295, right? So that one affects creditors. So let's take the next item, the next transaction rather. So on the next transaction, they say an amount of 172 in the creditors journal was incorrectly posted to the account of Juma and Company as 127. So here in the creditors journal, there was a mistake. An amount was understated, right? So we're going to correct it on the creditors when we do creditors reconciliation. The next one, it says the creditors journal was overcast by 40, and that one also falls under creditors. And the next one says a credit note for 200 rands was issued to L Brink in respect of merchandise returned by her, but no entry had as yet been made. So here there's a return in respect of a debtor and no entry has been made. So we're going to write it here as well. So it's also debtor's allowance. So if you want, you can add it to that 3,600, right? I mean to 3,000, to you add it to 6,300 like this. You say plus 200, right? And then here you will have 6,500, right? But in this case, I just want to write them separately. Now, that's your debtor's allowance. And then you go to the debtor's ledger. It's L Brink, right? 200. Now, it reduces, so that's why you need to subtract it. Here we have credited it because it reduces their balance. Now, the next item has said, why do we record it on both? Because they say no entry has been made. So it affects both the control account as well as the debtors list. Now, the next item says the total debtors receipts of 98,430 included an amount of 120 recovered from a debtor, Tim Alan, whose account had been written off in the previous financial year. So here, if you take note, they say an amount was included here, right? This amount includes 120, and that 120 belongs to a bad debt recovered. So it's either here as well, you're going to say 98,430 minus 120 120, and then you'll have your balance here. Or you are going to debit bad debts recovered, and then you say 120, right? So you are cancelling it. Bad debts recovered has nothing to do with the debtors control account. So you are just cancelling it when you are writing it here. Or you are going to subtract it from that total in which it was included, right? Now, let's take the next item. Okay, so we're not going to record it on the list because it was recorded here, there, not here. Now, the next item says debtor elements still has to be charged 89 rands interest on his overdue account. So there's interest on overdue account. It increases the debtor. So you just say interest on overdue account, or you can just say interest income or interest received instead of this long. This is interest income, 89 rands. So we also write it here. Who is it? It's elements, right? Now, something that you need to learn on the debtors list, you do not write the name of the accounts. Here we write the names of the accounts affected, but in the debtors list you write the name of the debtor that is affected, the person who is affected, or the company that is affected if our debtors are companies, right? But here you write the name of the accounts affected because it's a ledger account. Here is just a list. Now, the last item says an entry in respect of sales returns of 360 was incorrectly entered in the debtors allowances journal but was posted to the debit side of debtor A Klein Tonton Klein Hands account, right? Now we write the name of the debtor. This one affects, it was recorded correctly in the ledger, but in the debtors list was recorded incorrectly. So I'm just gonna say A Klein, right? A Klein, and then they say it was posted to the debit side of the debtor. So 360 was wrongfully debited, which means it increased their accounts. So we are going to minus the 360, right? And then we minus the actual 360 that was supposed to be subtracted. So it means here we've got 720. So it's a minus. This first 360 will set off the previous error. Then the second 360 is the correct entry, right? This one is the correction of the previous entry. The second one is the correct entry. That's why we double it. And then we are done with the list. Now let's go back to the, okay, we are going to total the list and then we go back to the ledger and we're going to close off the ledger, right? So we leave a space for balance carried down and then we write a line, we draw a line for the totals, right? We're going to put the totals here. Now here we're going to have a balance CD and here we're going to have a balance BD, which is the opening balance, right? Now let's calculate. We need to calculate how much do we have. So we're going to add all the items on the debit side and all the items on the credit side. Then we are going to take the one with the bigger the bigger side, the bigger total. We're going to write it on both sides. So the bigger total is 164,339, and we subtract the total for the for the credit side, right? We subtract the total for the credit side in order for us to get the the balance, right? So it's 164,339, and then we minus the total of the credit side. So we've got a balance of 58,509. It's a balancing figure, 58,509, right? That's our balance. Now let's go to this one, to the debtors list. We take the balance 59,340, and then we subtract 200, we add 89, and we subtract 720. Then we've got 58,509. So our debtors list balances with our debtors control account, which means everything is correct as it should, right?